Ghostbusters Afterlife. Sharon, take it away. First of all, tell me how much of a Ghostbusters fan are you?
Well, I suppose quite would be
Okay.
the appropriate word, because I was the right age in 1984 when the original Ghostbusters film came out. And this film does definitely play into that nostalgia for that original film. In
Yep.
fact, you would probably say this was probably a more direct sequel to the original Ghostbusters films than any other films we've seen since then that have Ghostbusters in the title.
Yep.
So so I would say yes, because I saw Ghostbusters in 1984 when it was at the cinema, and it was the biggest thing, and I had
Yep.
friends who were obsessed with Ghostbusters, and one of them even had the nickname of Venkman because they were just that big a fan. So I'm fully versed in the world of Ghostbusters. So basically, this is set in present day. So yeah, I'm trying to do the maths in my head because it doesn't seem that long ago. When you used to ask me when was 1984, I'd say 20 years ago, and it's
Yeah.
actually 40, nearly 50
Yeah,
years
it's
ago.
40 years ago, yeah.
So it's 40 years on, and we meet the main stars of the film are two children who don't know their grandfather,
Hmm.
and they live with their mother who is estranged from her father. And then it becomes apparent in the opening scene, because normally the opening scene is like a slightly spookier one, and then
Yeah.
it goes into a bit more lightheartedness. So the opening scene, you see one of the original Ghostbusters, but we don't know which one. You don't the identity of the original Ghostbuster is concealed,
Yeah.
and he is in this battle with a ghost, and he actually loses. And so it's not a spoiler to say that one of the original Ghostbusters dies at the beginning of the film, but we don't know who.
Mm.
And the family then inherit this ramshackle farmhouse where he has been living for the last 20 years, cut off from the town. The town don't know his name. They never refer him by name. He's only referred to as the dirt farmer, because he has these sort of apocalyptical signs up in his driveway, and the barn has just been sprayed with the huge word dirt. So
Yeah.
everyone knows him as the dirt farmer. But he was drawn to this part of Oklahoma because of this activity
Yeah.
that has drawn him to this particular place.
Spectral activity, I'm guessing.
This spectral activity in this particular area, and this unusual seismic activity, that in an area where there are no fault lines, where there's no fracking, where there's no other things that would account for earth tremors, there have been these strange earth tremors going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so into this situation, you land his daughter and her two children, a teenage boy and a young preteen girl. And they are suddenly thrown into this sort of small town in Oklahoma, where the boy makes friends with, he gets a job in this diner and makes friends with some of the local teens. And the little girl, she's quite a loner and a little bit of a science geek. She
Yeah.
makes friends with a little boy who has his own podcast, and his nickname is Podcast. And they strike up this friendship, and then as the story progresses, you get basically move into, for the Ghostbusters fan, is familiar territory, where
Yes.
you have a ghosty, then you have like a big bad. So you have your little sort of comic effect ghost who causes mayhem,
Yep.
and
Yep.
then
Yep.
you have your big bad who you have to have the massive confrontation with at the end. And there's all sorts of things that are going on that lead you to this boss level at the very end of the
Yeah.
film. So I don't want to give any spoilers away, because I think because when you're watching it, you're trying to work out which one is he. You can probably eliminate one
Yes. Yeah.
on purely sort of ethnic grounds.
Yes.
I think you're unlikely to be his
Yes, I agree.
grandchildren,
Well,
but
the
the
thing is,
others, it could be
I,
any one of the others.
to be honest with you, even just I think the trailer. If you've seen the trailer for Ghostbusters Afterlife, I think it's quite obvious which one it is.
Yeah.
I think it's quite obvious which one it is based on what his grandchildren look like, and also when you just the description you've given, there's one of the Ghostbusters who is likely to have gone into a dilapidated farmhouse in the middle of Oklahoma and painted dirt on the wall. There's one of all of them. So very, very valiant efforts to not give any spoilers.
So I didn't actually see the trailer, so I went into it without having seen the
Oh,
trailer.
okay, maybe that is the thing. Just go see films without watching the trailer. But
Yeah.
I think you are trying a lot harder than the film makers themselves were trying
Right.
to hide the identity of this Ghostbuster.
Of the
But
ghost.
but what we want to know is, does this give us the feels and the fun and the thrills of a usual Ghostbuster film, of a good Ghostbusters film?
I would say yes. It has the humour, it has the odd sort of tingly moment where, because I think they were quite good at mixing moments when you're going, oh, that is genuinely a little bit eerie, with humour and then adventure, and then sort of suddenly when you think something is going a bit linear, you think, oh, well, yeah, I can, yeah, oh, God, they're obviously going to catch that ghost,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and then
yeah.
on occasion, like they don't, and so you think, yeah, they have tried to throw in the odd sort of left, the right turn, and the odd changes. So, uh, yes, I think it did. I think it did it well, and I think it did certainly generate that feeling of nostalgia, but obviously bringing it up to date. Paul Rudd is obviously charming as ever. He's like a local substitute teacher and seismologist who sort of befriends the family.
Yeah, it is okay. So I've seen this film. Paul Rudd seems to be an audience surrogate, essentially,
Yeah,
because Paul Rudd, from what I can see, he's a massive fan of the original Ghostbusters in this
yeah,
world, and he seems to be about the only one who remembers that they existed and that there was such a thing as Ghostbusters. And so it seems like essentially he is because if you look at Paul Rudd, even though he might not look it, the dude is 50. So
yeah,
he would have been around about, like you were describing, like around about the age he would have seen Ghostbusters in the cinemas the first time round. And
yeah. Well, I think we're similar age. We're both in our early 50s,
yeah,
so we both would have been teens during that Ghostbusters thing.
yeah,
And yeah, if you went sort of, who are you going to call? You would remember
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that song, and remember that where you were. So there are some nice nods to the original one where I don't know if you remember there's like Mr. Stay Puft makes an appearance in this film.
Oh yes, yes, the Stay Puft
There's
Marshmallow Man.
there's a couple of scenes in the earlier film where ghosts turn up like to inhabit their former lives, and there's one scene that's quite a nice nod to that where a ghost is goes into a cafe, for example, and the sort of no one notices him until suddenly they go ghost, and the big bad is quite, yes, it's yeah, there's definite, you can't escape it. It is an homage, sort of a semi sort of remake replay, but knowingly, of the first film. So yes, it sort of has, and it has that sort of pathos,
Hmm.
because of the missing Ghostbuster in this setup.
Yeah,
So yeah, I thought to me it worked because it was a 12A, so it's sort of family friendly,
yeah.
and obviously it's, it because it's not full of horror. And I quite like horror, but also I don't like to sort of be sort of sat there going when I'm watching it.
It's like scare me, scare me, scare! Oh, why did you do that?
Especially as I walk home on my own in the dark. And as you know, you've been down where I live. I live in the
Yes,
darkest road in
yes, yes.
in the
With
area.
some very very weak powered street lights.
Very poor, and there's lots of trees and there's lots of shadows. So yeah. So often I think if it's going to be too scary, I don't want to be walking home on my own in the
Yeah.
dark into a very dark road.
Don't worry,
So
I'm still here. Carry on.
yes, I thought I quite like that it's family friendly. So it does meet that need as a Ghostbusters fan of old. So for me, yes, it did work completely on nearly every level. I said I could fault it because yeah, there's almost like too many nods to the original, but it's still, you came out feeling good about it, and you came out thinking, yes, it really was a good film. And I go the original Ghostbusters, and so it just made you feel nostalgic and warm and
That
scared in a little good way. So I would
that
definitely give a 4.
That's good. It shows at least Jason Reitman has done his dad proud, because this is
Yeah,
directed by the son of the guy it's Jason
the
Reitman,
original.
son of Ivan Reitman, who directed the
Yeah,
original. So, all right, cool. So a four
yeah.
for Ghostbusters Afterlife. Good stuff. Nice to know that they haven't destroyed our childhoods uh, with this. But I do think that this approach might be a better one, because they try to do the sort of totally separate approach with the last Ghostbusters movie,
Yeah.
which is the one with the all-female cast,
Little
which
female and Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, with Chris, and which is as a film, I actually quite like that film. I think it's a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
film. It's just it's almost kind of like, people are like, oh well, this isn't the Ghostbusters I remember. I was like, yeah, it's not supposed to be the Ghostbusters you remember. It's supposed to move it forward. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of, unfortunately, mostly man babies out there who who complain that things are not the way they want
They're not the
them.
way they were.
And
But if you like the first film, I think I don't want to give any spoilers away, but there are some familiar faces anyway in
yeah,
this film.
yeah. They clued you into this in the trailer.
Okay.
They clued
And
you
then
into
if
this.
you stay after the initial credits, you have to stay till after the cast credits. Then there's another
Ooh,
scene that is just a pure tribute to the first film. So
ooh.
it's nothing other than doing it for the fun of it. So you can't, if you get up and leave straight away, you'll miss a little gem.
Yeah,
I didn't stay to the very, very, very end because I know in the past with the Ghostbusters films there has been a proper like Marvel end credits one,
yeah.
but I wasn't prepared to sit through 3/4 of an hour of grips just in case
Grips,
there was a
best
final scene.
boy.
So I
Third
did leave
third
after
chartered
this.
accountant.
Yeah, yeah. So I left after this nugget of a scene. So if there was a very final end credit scene, I didn't see that one.
All
But yeah, if you
right.
can stay to the end of the cast names, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's a little gem.
All right.